What's up, guys? This is Ray. So today is the 10th of March, 2017. Although it's almost time for me to do my next week's weekly horoscope, I wanted to address something that I wasn't necessarily clear or specific about in some of my previous transit discussions that I've had. So if you have kept up with some of those, my eclipse video as well as my Jupiter-Venus retrograde video kind of touched on some of the chaos that's going on now. This is obviously a direct influence of the Uranus-Pluto square manifestation that people are now starting to actually feel collectively. So I was going to kind of go over some things. So in particular, I can attest to this for a fact also. Although I am a cardinal sun sign, I do have a mutable rising, as well as multiple planets in Sagittarius for myself as well. So not only is the Sagittarius stressor, or people who have a lot of influences from the Sagittarii archetype, a factor in this, but all mutable signs are going to be more susceptible to any of the chaotic stressors going on right now, as opposed to the other signs as well. So I kind of wrote some stuff down here. So Black Moon Lilith, in particular, I know a lot of people in the astrological community or in the metaphysical fields in general, fans and practitioners alike, are not as thoroughly rehearsed with Lilith's associations and symbolism as some other people would be. Specifically study and focus on Lilith because of certain aspects of my own chart, me having it on one of my angles, understanding her influences, and then just the kind of things that I'm geared towards more, being a Plutonian archetype. So I want to highlight something that people usually don't pay attention to or are not aware of. Lilith just went into Sagittarius. I did do a full video on Lilith and Sagittarius on my channel. You can look in the video section. I think it was a couple weeks back. So think about it this way before we get too complicated with the archetype of Lilith and Sagittarius. Sagittarius is clearly a mutable sign. We are in the end of the mutable years. So Saturn, being the timekeeper, is the designator of what kind of years that we're in, the mode-wise. So while Saturn has been in Sagittarius since 2015, it designated that we are going into a mutable year cycle. Mutable obviously being unstable, inconsistent, and unpredictable. So when we have not only the mutable year thing going on, but then we also had a Saturn square Neptune last year, and Neptune being another facet of the mutable archetypes would intensify inconsistency. Although that aspect is no longer going on, there will still be residual energy patterns that will influence those things, likely bouncing off and contributing to not only the Uranus-Pluto square manifestation, which will continue to unfold for the next decade or so, but now Jupiter has in recent times, I think it's actually been going on for a while now, that Libra has now created a T-square with Uranus-Pluto. And although Jupiter has its own particular associations when we're talking about like people, place, things, in this context, because Uranus and Pluto have already set parameters of the kind of facets that they're going to influence or whatever, Jupiter acts more as a verb or a triggering aspect for more energy, because one of the metaphors I use for Jupiter is a magnifying glass. So now, instead of us just starting to barely feel the stressors of the Uranus-Pluto square, because the last alignment with the Uranus-Pluto square was in 2015. And then that was actually, I can't remember if it was 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after, but there was that Pisces solar eclipse that happened, which we just had another one of those as well. So an eclipse synced up simultaneously with the last alignment of the Uranus-Pluto square. And that was supposed to be essentially one of the forceful triggers that would then start unveiling the long-term traumatic psychological effects of the Uranus-Pluto square. So back to what I was saying, when we have Lilith in a mutable sign, Lilith obviously is the dark side. Essentially, if there was supposed to be a shadow casted, a negative or evil side of a person's chart, or a chart in particular at any point in time, regardless if we're looking at events or a person, all the worst, horrible characteristics and descriptions would be attributed to Lilith. So not only does Lilith and Sagittarius make people unstable, psychotic, I instantly always think of Ted Bundy. I'm not saying everybody's going to turn into Ted Bundy, but if you kind of know like the timeline of his behavior and his events and everything, he was all over the place. He was unpredictable. He was dangerous. He wouldn't always be consistent with what he did to people. And he was able to pull the wool over people's eyes, and everybody would have pointed fingers at everyone else in a lineup before they would point it at him. And that's exactly like the kind of phenomenon that's now going on with Lilith and Sagittarius. So, in particular, she's going to intensify all the instability, the inconsistency, the unpredictability. Also the volatile stressors that people will be feeling as a result of this. Because Uranus, not only being involved with the Pluto and Jupiter T-square, it's been conjunct with Eris. And Uranus in Aries in itself is not only a chaos signature, but a psychopathic signature as well. Sociopathy, or psychopath, if that's what you want to call it. So somebody who could just do some callous sort of, destructive intention or act without remorse or without any kind of motive per se. And then with Eris conjunct with that as well, I know personally from having Eris in Aries in my 11th house, it makes me have antisocial tendencies. Basically defy the standard, the collective. That's why I'm such a shit starter. So if you think about that kind of manifestation conjunct with Uranus in this case, not even taking into account to the square to Pluto and then the opposition with Jupiter, that's obviously going to be causing a lot of animosity, anxiety, stress, and people are going to be feeling really erratic. It's going to really feel like a rat being shook in a cage. That's exactly how a lot of people are going to be feeling right now. Because of the Jupiter and Venus retrograde, some people will kind of go into a depressive, hopeless state, depending on the elemental balances and everything in their chart. And then some people are going to go manic. So that goes back to the fight or flight kind of theory with people's behavior. So you could put people in the same kind of environment and parameters. Some people will just curl up in a ball in the corner and just hide and cry. And then some people, despite the fact that they can relate to the person that's, curling up in a ball and just giving up, their immediate response, because of things in their chart, makes them attack things when they get angry, when they're upset. So people can get defensive or, be on the offensive, more or less, in this time frame. So pretty much the signature, more or less, for Uranus and Pluto square is Uranus is abnormalities, eccentric, and dysfunctional in a way. And Pluto has a lot to do with your psychological development and your psyche in general, your psychological defense mechanisms in particular, specifically. So if you think about that, the abnormal psychological balance of people's minds is going to be tested. The mutable manifestation as well is also another signature that would be testing people's mental stabilities or lack thereof. Because, in particular, all of the mutable lords and the houses and the signs that are associated with that are all facets of the mind and the cognitive process or the perception that we have in our world. Whether that be towards the Piscean kind of realm, where it's an assimilation between different levels of reality or consciousness, if you're talking about on a spiritual level, or like the Virgo discernment, or the erratic masculine integration influences of Sagittarius and Gemini. When you think of all four of those, not only are they all over the place, and they all can't find necessarily any common ground, which is the whole point of the mutable concept, if they are going at heads with each other, which a grand cross alignment would cause that. In fact, not only have we already had 2 of those since Lilith has gone into Sagittarius, but we will continue to have other ones as well. And as we go into seasons throughout this year that are mutable seasons, i.e. Gemini as well as Sagittarius, it's going to be even more intense. If you notice, Lilith just recently went into Sagittarius, a mutable sign, as we were ingressing into the Pisces season. So that signifies, as well as the solar eclipse being in Pisces, a mutable sign, the foreshadowing of how the rest of the year is going to go. When I warned people last year that the mutable years, not only the trilogy of it, the last installment of it, is going to magnify all the chaos and instability and uncertainty, but that the Uranus-Pluto square is going to continue to build up its energy and completely blow people away with it. And that's exactly what's going on. So let me see if I paraphrase my notes or if I missed anything. Well, contributing to aspects with Uranus, Eris, and the nodes. So if you look in that eclipse and suicides and homicides video I did, there's a specific reoccurring aspect pattern going on right now with Lilith and Sagittarius squaring the nodes. That's important because the lunar eclipse that happened in Leo 2 weeks before the solar eclipse just happened, the Leo lunar eclipse aligned with the north node. The Piscean solar eclipse aligned with the south node. So you understand that there's a polarizing phenomenon going on right now. And Lilith in particular, when she's in Sagittarius, is going to use people's beliefs, ideas, and perspectives against each other. So she's causing a significant division between the nodes, which is manifesting because of the houses that the nodes were in during these eclipses was the self and others. That kind of theme is now being projected onto the collective. So that's also where a lot of the polarization of narratives, as well as people going into each other's throats, either metaphorically or physically, are now manifesting and will continue to progress. The catalyst, more or less, that is going to continue to propel this inconsistency and make permanent, traumatic, drastic, transformative changes, because that would be the associations attributed to Jupiter, Pluto, and Uranus, is going to be caused by the Uranus-Pluto-Jupiter T-square. So if people are feeling erratic or stressed out, or there's uncertainty with everything, I even had a good friend of mine who just contacted me today. She's going through her Saturn return right now, and she, not only did I warn her a couple years ago that she's likely to get into car accidents, but she's gotten into 3 accidents since the mutable years began. So, her Saturn return was going on. And then just this week alone, she's gotten in a car accident again, been hospitalized, and she was fired from her job. And she is a consistent, good, she's a Sagittarius. She has fortune, spewing out her butt end all the time. Everything falls into place for her. So, that's a drastic example. That's a great example, actually, as to what this potential manifestation can subscribe to. The only people that are really gonna probably not be as stressed or benefit from this time frame are people that didn't really have their shit together to begin with before this mutable year started happening. So people who have either been progressing, trying to figure out what they want to do, or if they were some of the poor souls that were being held back by the Saturn-Neptune square that was inhibiting people from making any kind of substantial progress with their purpose, their career, their reputation, are now going to be noticing that there's sort of a positive, light at the end of the tunnel sort of thing with this eclipse happening. Which is, the only reason why I say that is because that's been happening to me. I don't really know of many other people that are experiencing something similar to what I'm experiencing. But the majority of people are going to be feeling stressed. And you need to understand, too, that you need to accept that while we're in this mutable time, and that Pluto is part of this T-square that's going to be the catalyst for changing everything, that nothing is guaranteed. And I'm not talking about just people in your life dying or you potentially no longer being here. I'm talking about your job, your car, your house. Nothing is for sure. In fact, my boyfriend not too long ago was talking about how we should invest in some real estate, like some property. And I told him absolutely not, that I'm not going to even fathom about attaching myself and making myself stuck to some sort of property or anything like that, well until the mutable years are over, preferably probably when Uranus is in Taurus by that point, is when I will maybe contemplate on that. You have to be ready for anything. In fact, when this mutable years kind of began, I started doing bug out and prepping stuff. Not anything hardcore like, Armageddon status per se, but, just having emergency supplies that I could just throw in my car at the time to be ready for this. Because that's exactly the kind of mentality you should have with this mutable year manifestation. As we're going through this last part of the year, it's going to be even worse. People are obviously going to be continuing to die. People are going to be mentally disturbed and unstable. And there's going to be a lot of psychological disturbances as a result. Therefore, if you feel that you're too stressed out, you should definitely find some sort of activity to outlet that stress. Whether it be some sort of yoga class or whatever, or if you want to start doing meditating or breathing exercises, If you need to go see a therapist, there's nothing wrong with seeing a therapist before something actually happens. That's called preventative therapy, okay? For you to explore theoretical, scenarios, or, understanding the nature of your mental stability, or what it is right now at least, and then being able to be informed about potential coping mechanisms that you could then engage in at the moment of these chaotic events actually happening. That's obviously something that I specify in and I offer as a service, but you can always go and see some sort of medical health professional. I would advise not to go to a psychiatrist per se and get on medications, because yet again, also, if something happens to the supplier or whatever of that medication, and or if you trust other people's mental stability and mental clarity to determine if you're going to get the proper medication or have a lethal dose or not in your prescription bottles, that would be something I wouldn't chance. In particular, last year, my brother actually was going in to get wisdom teeth removed, and there was that scandal that was on the news about how they accidentally mislabeled something, and they doubled the dose of, I think it was ibuprofen or something like that, naproxen, and he ended up having liver issues now, permanent, obviously, because they mislabeled his fucking meds. So that's just, yeah, no. So the mutable energy is going to push people mentally to their limits. Not only in the Uranus-Pluto square signature is associated with abnormal psychology, but the intensity of the mutable is a signature for neurosis, psychosis, and mental instability. So I already kind of touched on that. So elevate any unnecessary nuisances, drama, or any sources of chaos. So if it's not, it's supposed to be a personal thing, but basically, I'm not telling you to isolate yourself, but to remove yourself from a chaotic environment is very crucial for you to calm down. Especially during that time when you're going to implement some sort of meditation or breathing exercises. It's very important to cut off excess stimuli. I honestly, since this mutable year cycle began, I stopped watching television altogether. It was a progressive thing, but now it's stemmed all the way into, I don't even, I have a television and it's in another room, and I haven't even touched it in probably about a month, and then even when I did, I watched a YouTube video. So I don't even actually watch anything like that anymore. And my only justification, I used to watch TV, was to watch the news, and evidently the news, thanks of Saturn square Neptune, I can't trust the news. Not like I should have been trusting the news before, but I definitely, there's no point now. So I have no justification to watch TV at all. Because despite the fact that some people actually view TV as some sort of relaxing thing, it's actually stimulating you. And even if you're only watching your shows, it's still stimulating mental responses, which can trigger stress responses. For example, if you're watching some stupid show like Game of Thrones or something like that, and you're emotionally invested in the storyline, and something really weird or, upsetting happens in an episode, it does trigger stress responses in your brain despite the fact that you're enjoying it. So that's what I'm getting at, okay? So you need to distance yourself from any unnecessary stressors, any kind of people, places, things, environments that are destructive or counterproductive to you calming down and keeping your mental stability to at least the capacity it's at right now, okay? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a permanent thing, but either for the time frame now, for the rest of the mutable years, I would definitely say, well into partially, I would even give a 6-month grace period into 2018 before you even think about readdressing or reintroducing potential stressors or triggers that are in your environment with people or places or things. It's also completely okay to embody the Plutonian and the Pluto energy in this and just cut them off completely. But that's kind of me projecting my own MO with things. And if you'd like a personalized progression transit to natal report, or you want to do a consultation and kind of talk out some things just to vent or whatever, or explore some alternative coping mechanisms either through herbalism or even just mental cognitive therapy coping mechanisms, you're more than welcome to email me at rayreinhartz@gmail.com. My info will be at the end of the video as well. So if you didn't catch that. And also another nifty thing I have, so I can actually customize a calendar booklet. So I obviously wouldn't, make a calendar, a wall calendar thing, because that would be a little bit too much production on my part. But I can print out a custom calendar spread, which gives you, it just looks like a standard calendar sheet, and it gives certain aspects from transit to natal. So it would be specifically directed at your natal aspects in comparison with current transit aspects going on. So you would have specific dates, ideas of what kind of stressors are going to happen, what to expect, because prepping or doing any kind of preventative coping, or at least telling yourself, okay, Thursday's going to be a stressful day, I just need to know that, so I need to make sure that I have like my lunch all packed, and that I give myself ample time to get to where I'm going, and that I, just tell my friends that I don't want to go out to lunch that day, and I just go home and have a quiet day at home. Yes, there are some not skeptics, but there are some critics of mine who say that I'm actually enabling people to panic. I'm not. Clearly, you're all panicking on your own at this point, right? Am I right? Okay, so I like to use that kind of anxiety or panic scenarios or events constructively by understanding what's causing them, being aware of how long the duration will be, so when it starts and when it ends, and then exploring some potential proactive behavior or actions in general that will either diminish or take the blow off of it, or help you cope with the scenario that will happen. And trust me, I've tried this before, because I used to think I could. I thought that if I could predetermine energy patterns and understand how they'll manifest, that if I completely remove myself from the potential scenario that would likely happen, the energy will still come and get you no matter what. The whole concept with the Final Destination movie, I'm not using that as an analogy for people dying, okay? I'm talking about how you can't escape fate. You can't. You can, put yourself in a padded room because you're going to be in some sort of accident, but you're still going to hit your head really hard on the wall at one of those points, and that's the energy manifesting there. So you see what I'm saying? So anyway, if anybody's interested in reading or a report, or if they're interested in ordering one of those calendars, you can go ahead and just email me and let me know what you're interested in, and make sure you hit me up sooner rather than later. And even when you do, give me a day or so. If I don't respond right away, I've actually been having a huge surge of people contacting me for readings, and I've got quite a few that I'm already working on at this moment. As I was kind of dissecting some progression charts at this moment for some of these people, as well as my friend that just contacted me, I felt compelled to make this video to kind of fill everybody in, because again, I touched base on this with my eclipse video and my Jupiter and Venus retrograde video, but if people haven't seen that, or they're a little bit turned off by the gruesome suicide and homicide events that I used to correlate the aspects, this is a little bit more of a PG kind of thing, or PG-13, something like that, something not as graphic and gory. But yeah, anyway, so I hope you guys are surviving well, and again, don't hesitate. Be a hero. If you see any of your friends or whatever struggling, do a welfare check on them. Send them to a shrink. Do whatever you gotta do. And as we go into the last part of this Pisces season with the Scorpio Pisces Deacon, try to, as much as I have no room to talk per se, but try to avoid self-medicating with drugs in particular, because overdoses are going to be an escalating theme through this time. So, just keeping that in mind.
Is there someone there who cares for God-forsaken souls and God-forsaken man? Is there someone there who cares?